Lego movie often stands out against many other toy-based movies, since films of that nature are infamous for being terrible. And for everything all those other movies get wrong, the Lego movie manages to do right, being very funny, moving, and having a message that anybody can play with Legos the way they want to, and that nobody's ever right or more special for doing things how they like. But that being said, did it do all of this as well as it could have? Now, I know that the immense love and popularity of the movie tends to imply yes, but some have argued that even though it was better than most movies based off toys, there's no question about that, there's just something off about it. And today, I'd like to take a look at this movie and see if there's something to that argument. And obviously there will be spoilers for this movie, as well as a few other Lord and Miller movies ahead, so in case there's something of theirs you've been meaning to see and don't want ruined, you might just want to be careful. Okay, so when people tend to bring up that there's something weird about the Lego movie, they're usually talking in reference to the ending, and it's not without reason either. After all, there had never been even a hint that the characters only existed in a boy's head and that the whole thing is a metaphor for the problems he has with his father. And not to mention, once that element is brought in, it becomes the entire focus of the climax, with the Lego characters barely getting any attention after that. And while this resolution is a rather touching and well done one, don't get me wrong, it's still easy to see why some might find it a little off-putting when compared to the rest of the film. But honestly, I'd argue that this off feeling the movie might evoke in some people is present long before that unexpected climax occurs. Because most of the movie honestly jumps between wacky comedy and melodrama, and it's a tone that's particularly hard to grasp. Now, once again, the fact that the story is revealed to be nothing but a kid simply playing out his fantasies can explain some of this. But the movie is still intended for a viewing audience too, so these feelings they try to evoke are still most definitely intentional. And again, while the results aren't bad by any means, it doesn't exactly feel Lego. Because if you look at most video games or TV shows centered around the brand, it's usually focused on only the most outrageous, wacky humor and one-liners at all times, with the few moments it does get serious or sincere being all the more effective because of that. But not only does the Lego movie never quite grasp that more raw comedy style that other Lego media often has, but it mixes a much more serious story and a lot more emotional moments into the fold as well. Now, some might point out that it didn't go with the conventional Lego approach of extremely raw comedy with barely any seriousness to it, because they wanted to make the movie more accessible to adults, and that such a style would have been simply too much for them. But even apart from the argument I always give that sometimes kids' entertainment should be for kids first, there's still just something very odd to the approach it takes instead. It doesn't seem to know if the audience should be laughing at what they're seeing or taking it seriously. And it's only at the end, when things get really weird, that it seems to make up its mind that the more dramatic moments should be taken the way they're presented. To put it simply, the movie mixes comedy and drama in ways that aren't normally done, and the results can be very confusing. But this isn't a problem that's exclusive to just the Lego movie, as this is a common issue for most of Phil Lord and Chris Miller's animated output. Because if you look at most of their movies, one thing they seem to love doing is making them as funny as possible while also telling a story with huge dramatic weight. But honestly, I would argue that most of their movies would be better if they just focused on being funny instead of trying to tell a Pixar level tear fest on top of that. As I even said in my video on Across the Spider-Verse, which you can find a link in the description to, Lord and Miller are comedy geniuses, and yet there are very few movies of theirs that are actually straight comedies. Instead, they always insist on trying to tell an actual dramatic story in between all the jokes. And once again, it can be very jarring to witness. Like, take Into the Spider-Verse, for example. What genre is it supposed to be? Other than superhero, obviously. Because in many places, the movie is hilarious. But it also features the deaths of two people, as well as all the grief everybody goes through as a result, relationship problems, Miles' issues with his family, and his having to come to terms with being Spider-Man, all of which is played more or less dead straight. So is the movie supposed to be a comedy or a drama? And is it even meant to be for kids? Now I know some will point out that the comedy drama is a distinction that exists for a reason, but most movies that fall into that category are usually lighter on both comedy and drama so that the two can balance each other out. Into the Spider-Verse, however, uses both these genres to the opposite extreme, sometimes going from downright slapstick to tear-jerking melodrama all over the course of one scene. And the fact that the movie, and especially its sequel, did as well as it did in spite of that is really a small miracle. But once again, this is true of all of Lord and Miller's movies. There's just something to the way they mix comedy and drama together that nobody else does, and by all accounts should not work. Though, considering the success of most of their movies, maybe there is something to be said for their method after all. Especially considering most writers these days love to add humor to everything, whether it actually fits the context of the scene or not, and Lord and Miller seem to know how to do it better than most. But the reason I was signaling out the Lego Movie is because it just feels particularly odd that they would take such an approach to telling the story, especially because Lego is usually all about comedy, and is for kids after all. So for anybody expecting that, they probably found themselves very surprised. And once again, even if the final product is good, one just can't help but wonder how it would have turned out if they had made it a straight comedy with only a few serious moments and without the intense melodrama. Now, obviously, I'm not making this video just to hate on Phil Lord and Chris Miller, especially because, as I said before, I do think they are good at what they do, and in particular are comedy geniuses. I'm more just trying to explain the downside to their approach and why it can sometimes make their movies feel really weird and jarring. Especially in a case like the Lego Movie, where the drama being mixed in with the comedy is a lot more apparent and apt to feel weird. And even at times the comedy is a little off, but I'm not even going to get into that. The point is, the Lego Movie is a good film, probably better than it had any right to be. But in being as good as it was, it also reveals a fundamental flaw in the way its directors tell their stories. At least to some people, anyway. Alright, that's everything I had to say on that. So now I'd like to hear what you guys think. Do you believe that the Lego Movie should have been more focused on comedy and had the more dramatic parts of the script toned down? Or do you believe it's perfect just the way it is? Please feel free to let me know in the comments below. And please keep in mind that you do not have to agree with anything I said in this video. You are entitled to your own opinion, and if you completely disagree with me about everything I said, that's perfectly okay. And thank you all for watching. I really appreciate all of it. And I hope to see you all next time.